All right, let's go ahead and get started. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Ashley Jackson. I'm in charge of events here at Profisee. I appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. Bill Kane is going to be talking about the myth that data quality, or that MDM is only about data quality. Bill is a former Gartner analyst and a Profisee VP and MDM strategist. He's going to guide you through the discussion today. He served for 8 years as Vice President of Data and Analytics at Gartner and was the Magic Quadrant author. He is recognized as a thought leader and the world's foremost authority on the topics of information governance and MDM program management. And he is going to talk you through why MDM is about more than just data quality today. If you all have any questions, please drop them in the questions box. If you run into any technical issues, please let us know there too as well, and I'll be monitoring those in the background. The webinar recording and slide deck will be available in typically 24 to 36 hours. We'll email you that after the webinar, so look for that probably tomorrow or first thing Friday. All right, I'll hand it over to you, Bill.
All right, thanks, Ashley, and thanks everybody for joining. I see we still have some people coming in, but we'll get going. Today's topic is the next in the series of our myth presentations about MDM, and this one is that MDM is only about data quality. This one is placed at this point in the sequence of myths pretty purposefully. There's going to be some new topics introduced here, but some of it will be things we've seen before in the myth series, sort of redimensionalized in a different way of thinking about them. And I would characterize it as a little bit simpler way of looking at MDM in terms of what are the capabilities and where people stop and why they stop there and why that might not be as far as they should really take it to get full value. There are some symptoms of this, like buying a really inexpensive piece of data quality software to make some headway, and there's nothing wrong with that. The key is just understanding where you are in the journey by doing that and how you would proceed further, again, to get increased business value and eventually achieve full value. So MDM is really about orchestration of 4 capabilities. There are more than that. I think at Gartner we had about a dozen what we call critical capabilities at a granular level. But if you really take it up a notch or up a level and think about it this way, it's often helpful. So it's about data modeling, data governance, data quality, and data integration. And I often like to say, the reason you buy MDM software is to get all of these in the same box, so that the coordination of them is taken care of, and any difficulties that you might encounter are usually pretty easily addressed by the vendor in question, as opposed to trying to cobble together 3 or 4 or even 2 pieces of software, get them to integrate with each other and with the source data and target data. But again, overall, you're talking about these 4 things. I used to call it the 4 Ds. Within these, there are different capabilities around, data quality. There's cleansing, matching, all of that, and same thing for integration, and certainly for governance and modeling as well. But again, I want to sort of use this as a frame of reference to talk about where people start and stop, and where data quality fits into the total picture. So I don't want anyone to walk away from this thinking data quality is not important. As a part of MDM, it certainly is. It's one of the foundational pieces, but it's not the only one, and it's not where the value stops. Now, the last one, data integration, is, for all intents and purposes, assuming everything else has been taken care of, that's where you get digital transformation. So if you want to use digital business, digital transformation as targets, terminologies, program goals, again, integration will be necessary. So the first 3, modeling, governance, and data quality, are certainly prerequisites to MDM to providing maximum business value as technical capabilities go. And we're going to talk a little bit about business and a little bit about technical today as part of this. But again, those 3 capabilities are critical. I don't want anyone to say I said that they're not, because they are. However, you can only really get full value out of that if you increase its availability. And that means a couple of things, maybe more, but a couple that we'll talk about today. One is the breadth of places that data can be exposed. So increase the number of places it can be exposed, but at the same time, increase the currency or lower the latency of that resultant trusted master data. So we'll get into that a little bit more deeply in terms of what I mean and how you talk to the business about that, because again, that's where you're going to get the value. So they have to really not only buy in, they have to sort of, even without realizing it, sometimes state the reason they need that in a way that we can use with MDM to enable it. On the ground, this is accomplished, again, using real-time integration capabilities of MDM. That's what lowers the latency. And we'll talk about other reasons that's a good idea in a few slides. But again, assuming you've done the modeling and you got the governance and the data quality rules in place, the way you're going to really transform the business digitally is to increase the availability to more places and lowering the latency by increasing the currency of the resultant master data. So why do we want to do that? Anyone who knows me will say the first thing I always ask everyone is, why do we want to do whatever it is? So real-time integration, this is kind of obvious, but we'll start there. It increases the accuracy of your analytics. If you're no longer using data that's a week out of date because it's batch-oriented, or even a day out of date, you're going to be able to make better decisions and better operationalize whatever those analytics, if anything, are pointed at, whether it's heuristically through a person, a data steward or another business user, or a real-time integration to a system such as a data warehouse or other analytics platform. It'll be better if you have more current data most of the time. MDM specific topic here, real-time integration is the cornerstone of moving from analytical to operational MDM. We'll cover that in a little more detail in terms of the MDM implementation styles, which if you've attended our webinars before, you'll know that we use a lot. We'll do that in the context of that in a few slides. But again, if you want to move from analytical to operational, which is again part of moving to a digital business or going through a digital transformation, you really need some sort of real-time integration capability that you make use of. And finally, we'll talk about this in a couple of slides. Anyone who's seen our business benefits quadrant, I'll explain what I mean by above and below the line. But by lowering the latency of that data and increasing the availability, you, by nature, enable increased business benefits, not just technical benefits, which I'll also talk about, but business benefits that both save money and make money. And we'll talk about that again in a few slides. But again, there are business and technical benefits. And as you know, we here at Profisee very, very much stress the idea of business outcomes, generating program scope and program priorities here and program expenditures. So to remain consistent, we're going to do that here. So how do you get the business to either state a requirement for or take advantage of this ability to lower latency and increase the breadth of availability of different master data elements and domains? So one is, this is sort of IT centric, but you can talk, the business will understand this, is particularly if you have a PMO or a procurement area or the finance department's tuned into this. Real-time integration is almost always cheaper or less expensive than batch-centric integration. I was lucky enough to work many, many years ago for somebody at a brokerage who really espoused this and was one of the originators of the thought leadership around this. Again, you not only get the benefits of better currency, but again, if you are sending real-time updates to and from things in general, not just MDM, but in general, but since MDM is integration centric, it becomes more of a benefit here. It takes less processing power. A lot of organizations I've looked at, if not most of them, their cloud configurations or their on-premise data center configurations are set up to support the 30 minutes at 2 a.m. where they're loading their customer data into their data warehouse and doing the ETL processing and all of that. If you can eliminate that by making it more real time and doing record at a time or micro batches or something like that, by nature, you're going to save money on processing. And I've seen real companies actually postpone what they looked at as their annual CPU, mainframe CPU purchase to do their year-end processing because they implemented real-time MDM and actually found out that they didn't have to configure for that 30 minutes at 2 a.m. anymore because they weren't running those huge jobs. And it is a change, but again, it can usually pretty easily be justified in terms of financial optimization, if not operational optimization also. Again, your analytics are going to be more accurate. I don't think anybody has to be convinced that that's better and an improvement. This is a way, this one in particular, the third one's one of my favorites. I've had IT many times come to me and say, uh, I don't know how, I can't get my business to engage around that idea of moving from analytical to operational MDM, or what it would mean to them, or why it's good. One of the things you can do that has worked pretty well for me, and it took me a while to come up with this, is ask them to think about everything they do today by looking at a dashboard or a report that's descriptive, and then reacting to it in terms of business process or another analytic or something they do, whether it's internal or external. Would it be better? Is there any way that would be an improvement if they could do whatever the action is in a proactive way instead of reactive during whatever process created that data? So for example, customer onboarding, this is a pretty simple example. Customer onboarding, there are often business rules around credit risk or fraud or whatever it is that get executed sort of after the fact, and then somebody gets a report on Monday morning or a dashboard that says, look into these 5 cases because they've tripped a bunch of rules that warrant investigation for fraud or risk or whatever it is. Or on the positive side, maybe we should sell them some more things, and we couldn't process all those rules in time to do it, during the process, and we don't have those integrations in place between the applications to do it. So here's a report. Get a hold of these people by email or phone, or these businesses, and see if we can do some more business with them. So again, both above and below the line. Well, you can say to the business, that how well is that working for you? Is there any advantage to putting a pop-up window in front of you that would show you that while you were onboarding them? And there is a minority where someone's going to say, well, not really, because and I'll get back to one of these in a second. The people that do this, I don't really want them selling or talking about risk to people, because usually my response to that is that the position of when that's taken is that there's so much risk in the data that's why they don't want people that are not experienced potentially to do those things. But if you can make the data 100% trusted and get it up to them in real time, there's generally more trust, not just in the data, but in the people that are using it to do the right things. They can be made less heuristic or less human logic driven during whatever these processes are. It could be new product introduction, could be customer onboarding. There's just a never-ending list of things. Again, but the idea is to ask the business, you do a lot of things with the reports. Can we list those out in terms of importance or frequency or whatever it is, and then talk about what benefit would be there if I could actually make this happen instead of creating that situation. During the creation, I can tell you what's happening, and you can still make the decision to have it go to the report and react to it later, but you also have the option, maybe if there's bandwidth on the processing side or the people side, to do something a little bit more proactive, or maybe a lot more proactive. And again, the last thing, that's more for sort of existing processes. There's a version of that for new processes. And again, we're going to get to a graphic on the next slide that kind of organizes this a little bit for you. And I've used it before. But new processes can also be constructed more rapidly and confidently. And again, we'll use cross-selling and upselling sort of above the line here that says, if I know the data is correct, and I know what it is I want to induce in terms of behavior or incent, it becomes much easier. And there are a lot more people that can do that for me than potentially waiting till an experienced and expensive salesperson is ready to talk to a prospect or a customer. I can actually have someone very confidently do what they need to do within certain boundaries without engaging that more expensive resource. So again, those last 2 bullets are sort of the existing processes and the new processes, but talk to the business about how they do things reactively without really an agenda. Just get them to sort of talk about what do you do that's sort of on a reactive basis by looking at a dashboard or a report now, and then talk to the idea of doing it more of a real-time proactive way. There's some sort of small percentage I found that will say no. There are actually business processes and even analytics that don't really provide that much more value by doing this, but they're in the minority. They do exist, and you might run into some where someone says, it's not really going to help me. You also hear people say that on the latency side until they get low latency data, and then they figure out that there are things they could be doing that they didn't do before because the data was potentially out of date or actually out of date. So again, I've used this before. I won't belabor it, but this is just another way to organize those bullets into business centric outcomes. So and how people approach things. And I came up with this because I was the worst offender. I sat way down there in the lower left for years, not understanding why, the business wasn't transforming any more than it was that I worked for. We were able to do a lot of transformations 20, 15, even 10 years ago, but they would always sort of stop before really penetrating. And the idea is to think about benefits in these four categories, just to sort of partition them and decide what to attack and what's going to be more valuable before you go into the process, like Profisee's, for example, business impact roadmap, where we take specific use cases and evaluate them. This is more about dividing them up and putting them in a complex or relatively complex environment. So the horizontal line I referred to before as above the line and below the line, that's the x-axis for you math geeks. Below the line is saving money, above the line is making money. So you see cost efficiency and revenue enhancement there. What's new to people in terms of thinking a lot of the time is the vertical axis, the y-axis. To the left of it are things we do now, but we're not good at. Customer onboarding might be one of them, or new product introduction. We're not optimal. We're not efficient. There's a lot of inaccuracy, maybe some rework. To the right of that line are things we don't do at all because we just can't, or we think we can't, or the business thinks we can't because of our data. So the idea is to, what's the difference? The difference is on the lower left, most good IT architects and business analysts can do that themselves. They know what's wrong with a process that already exists, and they know how to fix it so it saves money and is not so wasteful. Those things are real. They should be counted. Again, don't leave here thinking I don't think that should be counted and brought into any prioritization process, because those are real savings. However, in the case of MDM, most often, because of the complexity involved in getting it really done and the length of time, those usually are not enough to push a business case into positive territory in terms of ROI. So we always encourage this idea of the business stakeholders getting involved. What is it they want without regard to, don't even say data to them. Just say, what is it that we could do better and what can't you do at all that you'd like to do? And that requires collaboration. Again, the business kind of has to be involved in that. There are some few and far between exceptions to that where IT really knows the business cold and can get funding in order to do what needs to be done. But in the majority, vast majority, you need business stakeholder participation there. And it's even okay to start in the lower left, but realizing that as you do what we're talking about here and moving beyond data quality into data integration and things of that nature that are going to really digitally transform the business, you do really need business collaboration in the vast majority of cases. So I said we would get to the styles, and this is about as technical as we're going to get, but there's also this idea of, moving from left to right here, and I won't go through the definitions of all these again. If you've been in any of our webinars on architecture or technical implementation, you will have seen this. And it's also, the way Gartner recognizes MDM is just described in terms of data architecture a little more specifically here. So again, as you move from batch to real time, you may move between these styles. So for example, you may, if all you're interested in at first is data quality, you're going to stick in that consolidated mode, get everything where it needs to be from a data quality perspective. And you can definitely get value out of that. Those are often used to source data warehouses and other analytics environments like MARTs or data lakes or things like that, where there's been attention paid to data quality in a lake environment. But again, the real value starts to come in as you move into the coexistence style, where you're able to make MDM the system of record for some data elements, and then finally in centralized, where it's the system of record for all master elements in a domain, like customer or product. And there is definitely, if you're being academically correct, there's no hard dependency between those three styles and real-time or batch integration, but there is an affinity. Most people who've been doing this for a while will tell you that as you move from consolidated through coexistence to centralized, you do need to go from batch to real-time. I have seen centralized implementations that are batch integrated. They're rare. And I've seen consolidated that are real-time. It just, most of the time, there's sort of affinity between batch and consolidated and real-time and coexistence and centralized. So again, if you're familiar with the styles, this is another way to think about it. This is not really sort of business friendly. You really want to stick with that previous slide when you talk about that and the slide before it in terms of sort of what is this going to do for them. You should never move from one style to the next without a business reason for doing so. And that could be technical savings, but really, again, business benefits should be central to even moving through these things. And again, just so I can say it, you will move, if you're really digitally transforming, you will move through multiple of these styles within a domain like customer or product over time. And you're also very likely to have different domains at the same time between domains. So you may have consolidation for customer data and centralized for product data, or vice versa. Those are both pretty common scenarios, particularly in B2B environments. But again, we're really here today to talk about making that data available and less latent. And so this definitely plays into that from an integration perspective. And again, for those that want to talk about a real world version of this, so you may have multiple records in your CRM system. I've done a lot of writing about that, where quality is not enforced as much as the data people might want. The salespeople usually think it's fine. But there's often a lot of duplication and just constraint errors in there, because those things are built to manage interactions. They're not really built so much to manage data. And when you bump them up against an ERP, you may have deficiencies there that you can, again, populate from MDM if it's a system of record, or from another source system if it's not. And again, supply chain, you have the same issue. And then, business information or data warehouses, business intelligence and data warehouse systems can do some work around this, but again, they tend not to publish back as often as they could back to some sort of central third normal form source that can continually publish this data back out. So again, this is sort of a template you can overlay on each style to say, the way this would actually work is dictated by what that style is. And again, you want something that's more tightly integrated over time with less latency, tightly and broadly as well. More disciplined in terms of how it's done, and I'll talk about that now. So what does that mean? MDM is really concerned with master data, and you're going to have other data such as transactional data and interactional data, particularly with CRM systems. So this is just one sort of best practice. If you don't have a lot of these systems, there's less incentive to do this. But MDM systems such as Profisee come with a services layer. You can call that directly to get the master data back and forth. But if you're really dealing in a larger environment, you want some kind of rationalized integration layer, abstraction layer, like an enterprise service bus. That's a pretty common solution to this, that manages both the interaction with MDM and the interaction with any other data sources and targets that are necessary for non-master data. If the volumes are modest, it can be tempting to put them in your MDM system, a copy of them. That certainly works. Again, the risk factor starts to go up as you do that, because a lot of MDM systems are built to handle all of those different data demographics at the same time. But again, if the volumes are modest and the volatility's fairly modest, you might very well be able to do that. But this is sort of the industrial strength best practice, is to surround this stuff with a bus that manages that communication. And that's becoming more and more popular. I find myself having to say or explain that much, much less than I have in the past few years. So I'm going to wrap up quickly, and then I see we have one or two questions. So just to make sure, again, there wasn't a lot new presented here, but I want to sort of retool it in a simplified way around, how to move past simply getting the quality to be trusted for your master data and actually utilizing it more. And how does that happen? It's really based in data integration and moving from batch to real time. How you do it, whether it's enterprise service bus, or if you only have a couple of systems, you want to do modest point-to-point integrations that are well managed. That's certainly an acceptable thing to do. Again, it really depends on complexity of the environment. So again, certainly requires data modeling, data governance, and quality management of master data. No dispute about that. The key here is it's not the only thing. In fact, it provides the foundation for value, but not really for the critical mass state of the data value that can be achieved. Real MDM requires taking full advantage of the data integration capabilities that are involved in the tools you have to provide maximum business value. And again, increased availability and decreased latency. Think of those as two dimensions. You want more broad use of this data, use and reuse, and you want the data to be more current when that is done. And those two things together are extremely powerful, and they're really at the foundation of any digital transformation. So using MDM to provide that broad access and get that data to be trusted, again, basically what I just said is critical to digital transformation. I would go so far as to say, it really would be difficult to achieve any kind of digital transformation without that. How you do it may differ, but this is by far the most prevalent and effective way I found to think about it is, don't stop at quality. If you make it perfect or close to perfect and nobody sees it, the tree fell in the forest and nobody heard it. It's a pretty good analogy. So again, quality is important, and it's not a bad first focus, but really keep your mind on those outcomes and your eyes on those outcomes and keep your stakeholders focused on that, and you're going to do much better. So I do have a couple of questions here. How do you integrate MDM with multiple systems, CRM, ERP, and again, real-time can't address all use cases. So yes, you could, again, would you need real-time data quality as well? And the answer is yes. If the data incoming, and we can certainly handle that at Profisee as an MDM tool, we can do that record at a time. In fact, most MDM tools now, processing power is so plentiful that even their batch intake is really just iterative service level intake, record at a time or small bunches of records at a time. So again, that's how we do it. We can certainly do that. And again, that's why it behooves everybody to get familiar with the integration capabilities of MDM, because most of these things are available, if not all of them in these tools. I can really only speak for Profisee and say that we do it. I don't want to speak for anyone else. But again, you're limited usually at the end of the day by whatever the capabilities of these applications are. So does the CRM system support physical deletes or only logical deletes? Same thing for the ERP. How do updates get done? What do they use for object identifiers? Not to get too technical, but often these application systems have very sort of closed off, self-contained object definition mechanisms because they don't really build themselves to be integrated with the outside world. And it still can be done. Again, the difference you see with MDM capabilities is that because MDM tools are mostly model agnostic and multi-domain, they live to take those things into account, those differences across systems. So you may have a little service development to do and a little architecture thinking to do there, but it certainly can be done. It really depends on, again, what the capabilities, the service level capabilities of each of those business applications, CRM, ERP, PCM systems, whatever they are really going to be your only limitation, because the tools I'm talking about from our end are built to do that. If they couldn't integrate in different patterns and request response, pub sub, they wouldn't be in business. We wouldn't be in business. So again, real time can address pretty much any use case in terms of the MDM integration. Now, again, if you want to snapshot something, that's something you can do almost outside of the daily integration that's going on with MDM and the core business applications. And I guess that's really what I'm talking about here. So thanks for the question, because it actually helps me clarify. There are things where you're just going to take pictures and do sort of batch extractions and things like that, and you still may do batch loads. But again, your goal here, and that's really what I'm here to talk about, is the overall increase in availability and decreased latency. And again, you may be sitting someplace, I want to acknowledge this, academically, you may be sitting someplace where there's no advantage to that. I'll tell you, after many years of doing this, I've seen those, they're in the minority. I'm still surprised. And that usually means there are other things holding the organization back. So I hope that was helpful. So how are type 2 changing dimension tables handled within MDM? So MDM pretty much is dimensional data. So, and it's model agnostic. So, and again, I'll speak for Profisee. There are other tools that are like this, but I don't want to speak for anybody else. If you had a snowflake model of your business, I use this example a lot, but data modeling is kind of a lost art. So the audience is getting more and more selective for this way of looking at it. If you had a dimensional model or a snowflake model of your entire enterprise and you yanked out the fact tables, everything that's left would be master data. So by nature, master data tends to be either intermediate or terminal dimensional data, indicative data. So In the type 2 case, what you do is, and I hope I'm defining type 2 the right way here. I've seen a bunch of different ways of looking at that lately. I'm going to assume this is sort of bitemporal modeling, and capturing images of the dimensions and all that over time. And if it's not correct, please type that in. But the idea is you can build bitemporality into a model agnostic MDM system simply by modeling those dimensions. There are some MDM tools that do it out of the box. It's just as easy to do it yourself. And the good news there is if there's multiple temporal dimensions that you want to model, you can do it. Most of the ones that do it out of the box limit you to one temporal dimension. And then you end up modeling your own on top of something that somebody else built into a product that may or may not do what you need. So again, when you get into those situations, I'm a recovering data modeler. I like to tell people, I really want to handle that myself. I spent a lot of the late 2000s prior to 2010 modeling that in MDM systems that were multi-domain model agnostic, and it did work. Again, you still have to build the services, which you would have to do anyway, that know how to navigate that. But again, you may find vendors that say, oh, well, we took care of that for you. Well, they only took care of it to one level. So again, that's what I would do if someone told me I had to do it out of the box. But again, if you want to do it to one level, usually you want the freedom to do within that. My mind keeps going back to the insurance business because that's where it used to come up for me most of the time. And then you have to decide on design considerations like, well, what if a stack of these time slices changes? Do I just attempt to change one slice, or do I do a full stack replacement? How do I want that to work? And no MDM vendor out of the box is going to make those decisions for you because half the time they'll be wrong. So again, it's pretty specific to implementation, but it is possible to do it. Anything that can be modeled, that's what's so great about MDM platforms now, and why that's the by far preferred type of tool now in the MDM market, because you can handle things like that. If you can model it, you can process it. So I hope that's helpful. So with that, I will hand it back to Ashley to wrap things up. And I wish everybody a great rest of the week, and we'll see you soon with the next myth.
Thanks, Bill. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, Bill?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Thanks everyone for joining us today. If you have any additional questions, just email me, and I'll you should have gotten that email contact information when you registered for this event, and I will relay them to Bill, and keep an eye out for the recording and slide deck here in the next 24 to 36 hours. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thanks again. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, guys.